First of all, I want to let you guys know that it was very difficult to get on here today. I'm feeling a little tired. I may be looking a little tired. And today I would like to walk through the story of Jonah in a way that is a little different than the way it had been presented to us as children, or perhaps even, this is just my take on the book of Jonah. So in chapter 1, God calls to Jonah and tells him, go to Nineveh. I paraphrase, but I don't want to paraphrase too bad. For their evil has come up against me. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, which is weird that he thought he could flee the presence of the Lord anyway. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. So he bought a ticket to try to expressly escape the presence of the Lord. But the Lord caused the great wind to go, where they were, and, rock the boat, because that's what the Almighty God does. The men on the boat feared God. It was Jonah's idea to be cast into the sea. That's something that I never knew. They consulted God prior to casting him overboard. I think it's very interesting the way that, these men revered God, like the particular boat that he got on. This is how good this story was to me. So the captain came. He was downstairs asleep. Wait a minute, I want to find the part. They were afraid, and each cried out to his God, and they hurled the cargo that was on the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down to the inner part of the ship and had laid down and was fast asleep. So the captain came and said to him, "What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise and call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us, that we may not perish." They said, "Come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us." So they cast lots. The lot fell on Jonah. Then they said to him, "Tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What is your occupation? And where do you come from? What is your country, and of what people are you?" And I have verse 9 highlighted. And he said to them, "I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." And the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him, "What is this that you have done?" For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. So, they consulted the Lord instead of just listening to Jonah to throw them overboard. And they pleaded for forgiveness for Jonah's life, because, naturally you would, especially, not only are you on the sea, but there's a storm. Like, it's only natural to know that he was going to die, right? So verse 17 is where the Lord appointed a large fish to swallow up Jonah. I really don't feel like I'm doing it's due diligence. So when the Lord appointed a fish to swallow up Jonah, that is to say that he will appoint someone or something to save your life and keep you in alignment with your purpose. I mean, you can run, but you can't hide. You know what I mean? Not, just to keep it real. It was never that Jonah wasn't a follower of the Most High. God knew he would do it. Can God trust you enough to save you from yourself? Can God trust you enough to know, they're doing this, but I know that once this thing, once they get it together, they're going to go forth with the work that I've set before them. And then I propose other questions like, or are you a flight risk? Because as soon as God saves you, provides for you, drops that miracle or breakthrough you've been praying for, you'll forget about them. Or you won't necessarily forget about them, but you'll be so wrapped up in, Michael Todd right now is talking about distractions. You'll be so wrapped up in being distracted by the money, and distracted by the attention, and distracted by, this and that and the third and the fourth, that, you won't really have time for God no more. But before you got that job, you was praying for, you had all the time in the world for God. Before you had that spouse you was praying for, you had all the time in the world for God. Before you had that baby you were praying for, you had all the time in the world for God, right? So, are you a flight risk? Or can God trust you like he trusted Jonah to save his life and cause him to follow through with what he called him to do, right? Chapter 2 is Jonah's prayer, which is worth the read. I'm going to pause and see if I'm going to scan through it real quick. So, at the end of chapter 1, Jonah sat in that fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Then, starting at chapter 2, then Jonah prayed to him Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol, which is hell, S-H-E-O-L, I cried, and you heard my voice, for you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas. The flood surrounded me. He's saying all of this, what I highlighted in a different color. Verse 4, then I said, I am driven away from your sight, yet I shall again look upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me to take my life. The deep surrounded me. The weeds wrapped around my head. At the roots of the mountain I went down. All of those things. Jonah's prayer is really worth the read. It's chapter 2. It's only 10 verses. Those who pay regard. This is verse 8. Those who pay regard to vain idols. There's that idolatry again. Forsake their hope of steadfast love. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. But with the voice of thanksgiving I will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Verse 10, and the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah out upon the dry land. So, as we get into chapter 3, Jonah finally does what he was called to do. And he went and told them, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. And the people of Nineveh believed God. They called for a fast and put on sackcloth, from the greatest of them to the least of them. The kids, the animals, the women, everybody. We look. We got 40 days to get this right? So at 3 and 5, when they heard this, they immediately repented. Because they believed God, they immediately repented, right? And I wrote here, many people won't listen to a prophet unless they meet their criteria. They call themselves, they like their presentation. They like the way that they deliver the message. They like their personality or whatever criteria you have for a prophet of the Lord versus the criteria God had when he called a prophet of the Lord, right? Then they all participated. And I think that is very important, that they were all on one accord. Because they believed God, they were all on one accord. Kids, dogs, cats, donkeys, etc. This part is interesting to me. The king caught wind of it. He got up from his throne, ripped off his robe, and put on the sackcloth as well. And sat in ashes. He proceeded to issue a PSA pertaining to the fast and sacrifice, and tells his people, this just might save us. So this is the king issuing a proclamation and published through Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, let neither man nor beast, herd nor flock taste anything. Let them not feed or drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth. That's very uncomfortable. I can't think of something that's in sackcloth today, but it's like spiky. Sometimes you find potatoes or rice in sackcloth nowadays, I guess. But let man and beast be covered with sackcloth, and let them call out mightily to God. Let everyone turn away from his evil way and from the violence that is in his hands. Who knows? God may turn and relent and turn from his fierce anger, so that we may not perish. So I think that speaks to the importance of fasting. When you lay down your flesh, he's speaking on eating and drinking. Yes, your flesh, and scientifically speaking, I suppose your flesh needs those things. But just like you starve your spirit and your spirit needs food too, you can starve your flesh so that your spirit man can rise up and begin to feed your spirit. It's a lot of power in fasting. There's a lot of power in pushing away the plate. And I've never done a dry fast. I just, as of right now, like up until this point, thus far, I've never done a dry fast. But he said, let them not feed or drink water, but let man and beast be covered in man and beast, everything that's inhabited in this land. The book of Jonah is only 4 chapters, so I discovered this today. There's 120,000 people in Nineveh, and that's not counting the beast there. So he's saying everything that inhabits this land participating in this fast. Period. It's a decree of the king, which leads me to the question: what will you do with your position of authority? What are you doing with your position of authority? Whether that's a mom, whether that's a teacher, a pastor or a preacher, whether that's a supervisor on a job, what are you doing with your position of authority? Whatever you have authority over, whatever it is that you have any level of authority over, what are you doing? Because when the king heard about this, he said, oh yeah, let's go and get down with the get down, and because it just might save us. Verse 10, when God saw what they did, how they turned from their evil way, God relented of the disaster that he had said he would do to them, and he did not do it. Do we have the power to change God's mind? Granted, yes, we know God knew what was going to happen all along. That's why he sent Jonah in the first place. But that is to say that your actions can determine which direction God goes in. Had they not believed God, had they not turned from their evil way, had they not called that's bigger than a corporate fast, to call a full-on fast for everybody, including animals. Including the animals is just heavy for me. Like, that's deep. So, do your decisions and things of that nature have the power to determine which way things go? You know what I mean? And what will you decide when he sends you a word? What if you were in that land and they said, we're doing this fast? Are you going to be prideful and say, yeah, no, I'm not? Because what if one person had done that and that just was the end of Nineveh? So that was good unto me. I do recommend that you read it. Again, it's only 4 chapters, and the chapters, like I said, verse 2 or 3 was only 10 verses long. So it's not a very long read at all, but it's packed with a lot of things that can help you to re-examine yourself. You know what I mean? I love y'all so much. I'm going to get off of here. Have a good day, and really zoom in on this and kind of see, if you were in Jonah's position, if you were in the king's position, if you were one of the people on the boat, if you were one of the people in the land of Nineveh, what would have been your response? Because these aren't just ancient stories. These are things, a lot of people use the acronym for Bible, which is basic instructions before leaving earth. So God knew the times that we were going to live in, yet these are the same basic instructions our great-great-great-great-grandmother had. These are the same basic instructions that slaves had. These are the same basic instructions that were there. God knew we would live in these times where people's Bible was on their phone. God knew we would live in these times where they would take words out and reverb and try to remix and try to do all of that. And that's why having a relationship with God is so important, because of the way that they do try to play with us, believers, with the body of Christ. They do try to play with us. So that relationship is critical. It's important for you to have a relationship, not riding on the coattail of somebody else's relationship with God. And even if that's your pastor, there's nothing wrong with going to church, but have your own relationship with God. I love y'all so much.